My daughter burst in, holding medical documents stating that she had cancer, and demanded $200,000 for treatment. I insisted on a visit to the doctor to confirm the diagnosis. The oncologist's knowing smile exposed her lie. "Are you doing this again? You won't believe what happened in 5 minutes." Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you are listening in the comments. The soup simmered quietly on the stove, sending steam curling toward the kitchen window. I stirred it slowly, watching the carrots tumble in the golden broth. 7:30 on a Friday evening meant peace in my Evanston home. Just me, my dinner, and the gentle tick of the wall clock. I set a single bowl on the placemat, adjusted the spoon beside it, and smiled at this simple ritual that had become my comfort. The phone's shrill ring shattered that tranquility. I wiped my hands on the dish towel, expecting maybe Harold from next door, or perhaps my old colleague Jim. The caller ID showed Victoria's name, and my chest warmed. My daughter rarely called on weekdays anymore. "Victoria, sweetheart, how are—" "Dad, I need $200,000 right now." The words hit like a slap. Her voice carried a sharp edge I'd never heard before, cutting through my greeting without acknowledgement. I gripped the phone tighter, searching for the warmth that usually colored our conversations. "Victoria, what happened? What do you need such a sum for?" "I can't explain everything over the phone. Just trust me, okay? I'm your daughter." Trust her? The demand felt wrong, aggressive in a way that made my stomach clench. Victoria had asked for money before, $5,000 for car repairs, $3,000 when Roland's freelance work slowed down. But this was different. This was desperate and secretive. That's exactly why I can't just hand over that kind of money without understanding. "You don't understand," her voice rose, cracking slightly. "I wouldn't ask if it weren't absolutely critical. Do you think I enjoy begging my father?" Begging? When had asking become begging in her mind? I moved away from the stove, pacing to the kitchen window, where streetlights were beginning to flicker on. The familiar neighborhood looked suddenly foreign. "Victoria, slow down. Tell me what's wrong. Are you hurt? Is it the children?" "The kids are fine. Roland is fine. This isn't about health, it's about—" She paused, and I heard muffled conversation in the background. "Look, I need this money by Monday morning, or everything falls apart." "Everything? What everything?" "Just give me the money. I'm your daughter, and I'm telling you I need help." Her tone had shifted from desperate to demanding, and something cold settled in my chest. This wasn't the Victoria who used to call just to check on me, who worried about me eating alone, who sent photos of the grandchildren with little notes saying they missed Grandpa. "Victoria, I've supported you your entire life. When you needed college tuition, when you wanted that wedding, when you bought the house, I was there. But $200,000? That's most of my savings. I need to understand. You're being selfish." The accusation stung like a physical blow. "You're sitting on all that money while your own daughter is drowning." Drowning in what? I wanted to ask. But her breathing had turned ragged, angry. The daughter who used to curl up beside me during thunderstorms, who brought me handmade cards on Father's Day, was calling me selfish for not immediately surrendering my life savings. If you won't help me, then maybe I need to reconsider what kind of relationship we have. The threat hung in the air like poison. I felt my grip on the phone tighten until my knuckles went white. 40 years of being her father, and it came down to this? A transaction? "Victoria, I love you, but—" The line went dead. I stood holding the buzzing phone, staring at its blank screen. The soup continued bubbling behind me, filling the silence with its innocent sound. My hand trembled as I set the phone down, and I realized I was still holding the dish towel, now twisted into a tight rope between my fingers. Sleep had been elusive, filled with fragments of Victoria's angry voice and the echo of that final threat. I'd risen before dawn, moving through my house like a ghost, touching familiar objects as if they might anchor me to the world I thought I knew. By 8:15, I sat at my kitchen table with coffee grown cold in my hands, staring at the morning light filtering through curtains my late wife had chosen. My phone buzzed against the wooden surface. The notification showed Victoria's name, and for a moment, hope fluttered in my chest. Perhaps she'd slept poorly too. Perhaps she'd realized how harsh she'd sounded, how unreasonable her demand had been. I touched the screen with shaking fingers. The words that appeared made my blood freeze. "You can't call yourself a father if you won't help your daughter in her time of need. Mom would have understood me. You're sitting on a fortune while I'm desperate. and you don't even care. You've become selfish and cold since she died. Don't expect to see your grandchildren if you can't be bothered to help your own family. I read it twice, then a third time, each word cutting deeper than the last. The coffee cup trembled in my other hand as I set it down, the ceramic clicking against the saucer in the quiet kitchen. Mom would have understood me. The phrase twisted in my chest like a knife. Winifred had been gone 5 years. 5 years of missing her warmth, her gentle way of mediating our family's small conflicts. And now, Victoria was using her memory as a weapon, wielding my grief like a club to beat me into submission. I thought of Winifred's soft voice, how she'd have handled this situation with patience and wisdom. She would have wanted to understand Victoria's crisis, yes, but she also would have asked the hard questions. She wouldn't have simply opened her purse and emptied it without knowing why. When had my daughter become this person? This stranger who threatened to withhold my grandchildren as punishment for not immediately surrendering everything I'd worked for? The Victoria I knew had been raised better than this, had been taught that love wasn't conditional, that family didn't operate on threats and ultimatums. The message continued to glow on my phone screen, each accusation a fresh wound, selfish and cold. I'd spent 35 years providing for her, supporting her dreams, helping her through college, walking her down the aisle, celebrating her children's births. I'd been there for every milestone, every crisis, every moment she'd needed me. Until yesterday, when I dared to ask questions. I pushed back from the table, the chair scraping against the floor. The house felt too small suddenly, the walls pressing in with memories of the daughter who used to fill it with laughter. I needed air, needed space to think, without these familiar surroundings whispering of better times. I grabbed my jacket from the hook by the door and stepped into the October morning. The cold bit at my cheeks, but it felt clean compared to the poison in that message. As I walked toward my car, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was mourning two losses now, my wife and the daughter I thought I knew. The park by Lake Michigan called to me, somewhere I could walk and remember when Victoria had been different, before marriage had changed her into someone I barely recognized. The lakefront park stretched gray and windswept before me, autumn clouds mirroring the turbulence in my chest. I'd driven here without conscious decision, muscle memory guiding me to this place where Winifred and I used to bring Victoria for weekend picnics. Now I walked alone among the fallen leaves, my footsteps crunching a rhythm that matched my scattered thoughts. A young family passed by, father pushing a stroller, mother laughing at their toddler's attempt to catch falling leaves. The scene twisted something inside me. Once, that had been us. Once, Victoria had looked at me with adoration instead of calculation. When had she changed? The question haunted every step I took along the water's edge. Before Roland, Victoria had been different. She'd called every Sunday just to chat, asking about my week, sharing funny stories about her job and marketing. After Winifred died, Victoria had appeared at my door with groceries and homemade meals, sitting with me through those first terrible evenings of solitude. She'd been thoughtful, independent, content with her modest apartment and secondhand furniture. Then came Roland Stone. I remembered our first meeting, Victoria glowing with new love, introducing this charming man who spoke of big dreams and easy money. Roland had smiled at all the right moments, complimented Winifred's cooking, even helped clear the dishes. But I'd caught something in his eyes when he looked around our comfortable but modest home, a measuring look calculating our worth. The changes began subtly. Victoria started mentioning expensive restaurants, designer clothes she needed for Roland's business networking. Her calls became less frequent, more purposeful. Instead of casual conversations, she'd mention financial pressures. Roland's equipment needed upgrading, their rent had increased, the children needed better preschools. Each request had seemed reasonable individually. A few thousand here, a few thousand there. I'd been happy to help, remembering how Winifred and I had struggled in our early marriage. But looking back now, walking past couples who reminded me of what we'd lost, I saw the pattern I'd been blind to. Roland had been reshaping Victoria's values, her expectations, her very relationship with money. The daughter who'd once been proud of finding a perfect dress at a thrift store began talking about image and keeping up appearances. The woman who'd thanked me profusely for helping with her wedding deposit now demanded 6 figures as if it were owed to her. I paused at a bench overlooking the gray water, remembering Roland's behavior at family gatherings, How he'd steered conversations toward money, who was buying what, who could afford which vacation. How he'd made subtle comments about my simple lifestyle, while praising neighbors who drove luxury cars or took expensive cruises. Victoria had begun echoing his attitudes. My modest home became quaint in her vocabulary. My practical Ford became something she apologized for to her new friends. Gradually, I'd transformed in her eyes from a successful engineer who'd provided well for his family into an old man hoarding money that rightfully belonged to the younger generation. The manipulation had been so gradual, so skillfully done, that I'd almost missed it entirely. But yesterday's phone call had stripped away all pretense. Roland needed money, serious money, and Victoria had become his weapon to extract it from me. A jogger passed by, breathing hard in the cold air, and I envied her clarity of purpose. My path forward felt murky, complicated by love and loss and the terrible recognition that my daughter might be beyond saving from Roland's influence. The wind picked up off the lake, carrying the scent of winter. I pulled my jacket tighter and walked toward the parking lot, my steps heavier with each revelation. Something told me I needed to remember the Victoria I'd raised before I could figure out how to save her from what she'd become. The drive home passed in a blur of streetlights and questions without answers. I parked in my driveway and sat for several minutes, engine ticking as it cooled, staring at the warm glow from my living room windows. The house looked peaceful from outside, but I knew I wouldn't find peace within its walls tonight. I bypassed the living room entirely, climbing the stairs to my study where dust motes danced in the late afternoon sunlight. This room held our family's visual history. Photo albums lined the lower shelf of my bookcase. Family portraits clustered on my desk. I'd retreated here often after Winifred's death, surrounding myself with happier times. Today felt different. Today I needed evidence. I pulled the oldest album from the shelf, its leather cover soft with age. Winifred had organized these meticulously, each photo labeled in her careful handwriting. I settled into my reading chair and opened to Victoria's childhood. Gap-toothed grins, birthday parties with homemade cakes, Christmas mornings filled with modest but thoughtful gifts. But it was Victoria's teenage years that drew my attention. Here was my daughter at 16, arms around both Winifred and me at her high school graduation. Her smile radiated genuine joy, not the calculating look I'd seen yesterday. Her handwritten card lay tucked behind the photo. Thank you for teaching me that hard work matters more than easy answers. I love you both. Hard work matters more than easy answers. When had that philosophy abandoned her? I turned pages slowly, watching Victoria mature through college photos. There she was, helping me fix the kitchen sink during summer break, laughing at my frustration with the stubborn pipe. Another photo showed her at her marketing job, professional but unpretentious in a simple blazer she'd bought at a consignment shop. The album documenting her caring nature after Winifred's death felt especially painful now. Victoria arriving with grocery bags, refusing to let me pay her back. Victoria sitting beside me on the couch, both of us crying while we looked through Winifred's things. Victoria insisting I keep my wedding ring on. Mom would want you to remember the love, Dad. That caring woman seemed like a stranger now. I reached for the final album, the one covering Victoria's marriage to Roland. Even in the engagement photos, I could see the change beginning. Victoria's clothes were more expensive, her smile somehow sharper. Roland stood beside her like he owned her, his arm possessive around her waist. The wedding photos told their own story. Victoria looked beautiful but tense, glancing frequently at Roland as if seeking approval. I remembered that day, how Roland had criticized the modest reception venue, complained about the simple flowers, made jokes about upgrading their lifestyle now that they were married. Winifred had pulled me aside that day, her face creased with worry. "That boy doesn't feel right to me, Elbert," she'd whispered while we watched Roland lecture Victoria about proper champagne etiquette. "Watch how he talks about money, about success. He sees dollar signs when he looks at our family." I'd dismissed her concerns then. "You're just being overprotective," I'd said, squeezing her hand. "Victoria's happy. That's what matters." But Winifred had been right. She'd seen what I'd refused to acknowledge, that Roland viewed our family as a resource to be mined rather than relationships to be cherished. The last photos in the album showed our final family gathering before Winifred's diagnosis. Victoria sat stiffly beside Roland, no longer initiating conversations or telling her old stories. She'd become an echo of his opinions, nodding when he spoke, laughing at his jokes even when they weren't funny. Somewhere in that album, I'd lost my daughter. She'd been replaced by this person who threatened to withhold my grandchildren, who used my grief as a weapon, who demanded my life savings without explanation. I closed the album and leaned back in my chair, feeling older than my 68 years. The afternoon light had faded while I'd traveled through our family's history, leaving my study in shadows. Outside my window, neighbors were arriving home from work, turning on porch lights, beginning their evening routines. But I sat in the growing darkness, mourning not just my wife, but the daughter I'd apparently lost along the way. The week that followed passed like a held breath. I went through my routines mechanically, morning coffee, evening news, simple meals. But my mind remained fixed on those photo albums, on the evidence of Victoria's transformation from caring daughter to calculating stranger. I'd made a decision during those long days. If she contacted me again, I wouldn't be caught off guard by emotion. Friday evening found me in my living room with a bowl of soup, the same meal interrupted by her call a week ago. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was reaching for the remote when headlights swept across my front windows, followed by the slam of a car door. Victoria's key turned in my lock before I could rise from my chair. She burst through the door, clutching manila folders against her chest, her face streaked with what appeared to be recent tears. The theatrical entrance would have fooled me a week ago. Tonight, I simply watched. "Dad!" Her voice cracked with desperate urgency. "I have cancer. I need $200,000 for treatment." The exact same amount. I set down my soup spoon and studied her face, noting how her grief seemed to come and go with her words. "Victoria, slow down. What are you saying?" She collapsed dramatically into the chair across from me, spreading medical documents across my coffee table like she was dealing cards. "Look at these. Stage 3 breast cancer. The doctors say I need immediate treatment or..." She let the sentence hang, dabbing at her eyes. 200,000, I repeated carefully. "The same amount you demanded last week." Her hand faltered for just a moment. I couldn't tell you then. I was trying to protect you from worry, but now there's no time left." I moved closer to examine the papers she'd scattered across my table. Official letterheads, medical terminology, treatment plans with astronomical costs. To an untrained eye, they looked convincing, but something nagged at me, the same instinct that had helped me solve engineering problems for 30 years. "Let me understand this timeline," I said, sitting on the edge of the couch. "You've known about this diagnosis for weeks, but you called me demanding money without explanation." "I was scared. I thought maybe the doctors were wrong, that I could handle it privately." Her voice rose, theatrical desperation replacing the calculated calm I'd heard in our previous conversation. "But they're saying every day matters now." I picked up one of the documents, scanning the medical jargon. The costs were listed in suspiciously round numbers, exactly 200,000 for a treatment plan that seemed both urgent and vague. No mention of insurance coverage, no detailed breakdown of specific procedures. "Victoria, this is serious. We need to involve your regular doctors, get second opinions." "No!" The word exploded from her with such force that I looked up sharply. She caught herself, modulating her tone. "I mean, I have the best specialists already, private doctors who can move quickly." But her eyes darted away as she spoke, and I noticed her hands trembling as she rearranged the documents. Not from illness, but from something else entirely, fear. She was afraid, but not of cancer. She was afraid of me discovering something. I leaned forward, studying the medical documents more carefully, while Victoria fidgeted in her chair. My engineering background had taught me to examine evidence methodically, and these papers were raising red flags faster than I could catalog them. "Dr. Harrison Blackwell," I read aloud from one letterhead. "Chicago Advanced Oncology Center." The formatting looked professional, but something felt off about the font consistency. Some paragraphs seemed slightly bolder than others, as if they had been added separately. "He's the best in the city," Victoria said quickly. "That's why the treatment is so expensive." I reached for my laptop on the side table, ignoring Victoria's sharp intake of breath. "Let me just verify some of this information. Dad, we don't have time for research. Every day I wait. Then a few minutes won't matter." I opened the browser and typed in the doctor's name. No results for a Dr. Harrison Blackwell at any Chicago Oncology Center. I tried the facility name, Chicago Advanced Oncology Center. Again, nothing. Victoria was talking rapidly now, her voice climbing toward panic. Maybe they're not online yet. It's a very exclusive practice. Dad, you have to trust me. Trust. The same word she'd used to manipulate me last week. I looked up from the laptop screen, studying my daughter's face. Her makeup was smeared from strategic tears, but her eyes held calculation, not the hollow fear of someone facing a terminal diagnosis. Victoria, I know what cancer looks like. I watched your mother battle heart disease for 2 years. Sick people don't look like you right now. Her hand flew to her throat. I'm good at hiding it. I didn't want to worry anyone. But I'd caught something else in the documents, a patient ID number that changed format halfway through the paperwork. The lab results were printed on generic paper, not official laboratory letterhead. Most telling of all, the doctor's signature looked traced, as if someone had copied it from another source. I want to call Dr. Hawkins, I said, mentioning the oncologist who'd treated several of my friends. He can recommend specialists, help us understand these treatment options. Victoria's face went white. That's not necessary. I told you, I have the best doctors already. Then you won't mind a second opinion. The silence stretched between us, heavy with unspoken truths. Victoria stared at the medical documents as if they might transform into something more convincing under her gaze. I could practically see the wheels turning in her head, calculating new strategies. Finally, I spoke the words that would change everything between us. No doctor visit, no money. Victoria's mask slipped completely for just a moment, and I saw raw fury flash across her features before she caught herself. Fine, she said through gritted teeth, but I choose when we go. Monday, 2 p.m., Dr. Hawkins' office. She began gathering the documents with sharp, angry movements. You're going to feel terrible when you realize I was telling the truth. But as she stuffed the papers back into their folders, one sheet fluttered to the floor. I glimpsed it as she scrambled to retrieve it, the same medical report, but with different patient information at the top. My daughter wasn't just lying to me, she was running some kind of sophisticated con game, and I was going to find out exactly what it was. Saturday morning brought clarity with my first cup of coffee. I sat at the kitchen table with the phone beside me, notepad open, questions written in my careful engineer's script. The fraudulent medical documents lay spread before me, like evidence at a trial, and I had spent a restless night cataloging every inconsistency. My pen had traced over the same concerns repeatedly. Wrong font sizes, trace signatures, missing letterheads, the patient ID numbers that shifted formats mid-document, treatment costs rounded to suspiciously neat figures. Everything screamed amateur forgery to anyone willing to look closely. I dialed Victoria's number at 9 sharp. Dad? Her voice carried wariness instead of the desperate urgency from yesterday. Victoria, we need to finalize the appointment with Dr. Hawkins. I called his office and they can see us Monday at 2. Silence stretched across the line, followed by rapid breathing. I told you, I don't need another doctor. My specialists know my case. Then you won't mind proving it. My tone carried the same authority I'd used with junior engineers who tried to shortcut safety protocols. This is not negotiable. You're not listening to me. Every day matters with cancer. We're wasting precious time. If it's real, Victoria, 30 minutes with a qualified oncologist will confirm it. If it's not, I let the implication hang between us like a sword. Her voice shifted, becoming smaller, more manipulative. Don't you trust your own daughter? I'm scared, Dad. I thought you'd support me through this. The familiar guilt tugged at me, but I'd armored myself with a week's worth of painful realizations. Supporting you means getting proper medical verification. That's final. Fine! The word exploded from her phone with such force I pulled mine away from my ear. Then, softer, calculating, but if I'm going to humiliate myself with another doctor questioning my diagnosis, I choose the timing. Monday, 2 p.m., already confirmed. That's too soon. I need time to prepare my medical history, gather additional records. The appointment is confirmed, Victoria. If you don't show, that tells me everything I need to know. Another long pause. I could practically hear her mind racing, weighing options, calculating risks. Finally, fine, I'll meet you there. We'll go together. I'll pick you up at 1:30. No! The refusal came too quickly, too sharp. I I have other appointments in the city that day. I'll meet you at the clinic. Other appointments, more lies stacking upon lies. But I didn't argue. Let her think she maintained some control over the situation. Dr. Nelson Hawkins, Chicago Medical Center, 14th floor. Don't be late. The dial tone buzzed in my ear, and I set the phone down with steady hands. Across the table, those fraudulent documents seemed to mock me with their amateur deception. My daughter, my sweet Victoria, who used to bring me hand-drawn cards on Father's Day, was running a con game sophisticated enough to fool most parents blinded by love. But not this parent, not anymore. The weekend stretched ahead like a held breath, both of us preparing for Monday's confrontation. I spent those hours remembering Winifred's warnings. Catalog Monday afternoon found me navigating Chicago traffic with the grim determination of a man approaching a necessary amputation. Lakeshore Drive stretched ahead, crowded with the usual mix of commuters and tourists, while I gripped the steering wheel and tried to organize my racing thoughts. The radio droned about October weather patterns, but my mind kept returning to Victoria's voice during Saturday's phone call. How it had shifted from desperation to calculation when cornered. How quickly she'd refused my offer to drive together, preferring to maintain control over her arrival time. Downtown Chicago's medical district rose around me like a concrete canyon of hope and heartbreak. I'd driven these streets before, bringing Winifred to specialists during her final months, watching her fight with dignity, while Victoria sat beside her, holding her hand. The memory stung with fresh irony. Parking near the medical center took 20 minutes of circling blocks, feeding meters, joining the steady stream of patients and families navigating their own crises. I walked the 3 blocks to Dr. Hawkins' building, with my coat collar turned up against the October wind, arriving 15 minutes early. Victoria's car wasn't in sight yet. I waited on the sidewalk, watching other families arrive for appointments, elderly couples moving slowly together, adult children shepherding aging parents, the quiet conversations of people facing serious medical realities. Everyone here carried the weight of genuine concern. At 1:55, Victoria's silver Honda pulled to the curb with a sharp squeal of brakes. She emerged looking professionally dressed, but visibly agitated, clutching her purse like a lifeline while scanning the area with darting eyes. "Dad!" she approached with forced brightness. "Sorry I'm running late. Traffic was terrible." But I noticed her hands trembling as she adjusted her purse strap, noticed how she avoided meeting my eyes directly. This wasn't the composed performance from Friday evening. "Maybe we should reschedule," she said suddenly. "I'm feeling worse today, and this doctor might not understand my specific type of cancer. Dr. Hawkins is one of Chicago's best oncologists. He's helped several of my friends through treatment. But what if he wants to run new tests? That could delay my treatment by weeks." I placed a gentle hand on her shoulder, feeling her flinch under my touch. Despite everything, she was still my daughter, still the little girl who used to climb into my lap during thunderstorms. "Sweetheart, if you're really sick, he'll help us find the best treatment. That's what doctors do." Her eyes filled with tears, whether from guilt, fear, or genuine emotion, I couldn't tell. What if he can't help me? Then we'll find someone who can. We walked toward the building entrance together, my arm around her shoulders while she leaned into me with what felt like genuine need. For a moment, the manipulative stranger dissolved, and I glimpsed the daughter I remembered. The medical building's lobby bustled with purpose, nurses in scrubs heading between floors, families consulting directories, the quiet efficiency of a place where serious business happened daily. Victoria slowed as we approached the elevators, her breathing becoming shallow. "Floor 14, I said, pushing the call button. "Maybe we could grab coffee first. I need a minute to collect myself." We're already 5 minutes late. The elevator doors opened, revealing a handful of other visitors. An elderly man with his concerned daughter, a middle-aged woman clutching test results. Victoria stepped inside reluctantly, pressing herself against the back wall as if seeking escape. 14 floors of ascending tension. Victoria checking her phone obsessively, fidgeting with her documents folder, avoiding conversation with anyone. The closer we got to Dr. Hawkins' office, the more her composure cracked. The elevator doors opened onto a carpeted hallway lined with medical office doors. Chicago Oncology Associates, Suite 1420, appeared ahead, with its frosted glass entrance and professional nameplate. Victoria stopped walking entirely. I can't do this. Yes, you can. I guided Victoria gently but firmly through the glass doors into Dr. Hawkins' waiting room. Soft lighting and comfortable chairs created an atmosphere designed to ease anxiety, but Victoria remained rigid beside me, clutching her folder of documents like armor. The receptionist smiled warmly as I approached. "Mr. Rose, Dr. Hawkins is ready for you." We followed a nurse down a hallway lined with diplomas and awards, past examination rooms where other patients received care from qualified professionals. Victoria's breathing grew more labored with each step, though I suspected stress rather than illness. Dr. Hawkins' office radiated competence and compassion. Bookshelves filled with medical references, family photos suggesting a man who understood both professional excellence and personal warmth. Sunlight streamed through large windows, illuminating certificates and commendations that spoke to 30 years of fighting cancer. "Elbert, good to see you again." Nelson Hawkins rose from behind his desk, extending his hand with the confident grip of a man accustomed to delivering both hope and hard truths. His gray hair and lined face carried the authority that came from countless difficult conversations. "Nelson, this is my daughter Victoria. I mentioned she'd like a second opinion on her recent diagnosis." Victoria managed a wan smile, but I noticed her reluctance to shake the doctor's hand, how she positioned herself closer to the door than to his desk. "Of course. Please, both of you have a seat." Dr. Hawkins gestured toward the comfortable consultation chairs arranged for difficult conversations. "Victoria, I understand you've received some concerning news about your health." "Stage 3 breast cancer," she said quickly, the rehearsed words tumbling out. "My doctors say I need immediate treatment, but Dad wanted another opinion." "That's wise. Cancer treatment benefits from multiple perspectives." Dr. Hawkins settled behind his desk with practiced ease. "I'd like to review your test results and current treatment recommendations. Did you bring your medical records?" Victoria's grip on her folder tightened visibly. "I have everything here, but maybe you could just examine me instead. Sometimes paperwork can be confusing." "The paperwork tells the story, Victoria. Lab results, imaging studies, pathology reports, they're the foundation of any treatment plan. May I see what you've brought?" With obvious reluctance, Victoria opened her folder and slid several documents across the desk. Dr. Hawkins accepted them with professional courtesy, adjusting his reading glasses as he began to scan the first page. I watched his face carefully, noting the subtle shift from welcoming professionalism to concentrated attention. His eyes moved quickly across the documents, then slowed, focusing on specific sections. He looked up at Victoria, then back down at the papers. "Let me examine these documents more carefully." Victoria's voice climbed toward panic. "You must be confusing me with someone else. These are my original test results." "Victoria," I interrupted gently. "What's happening here?" Dr. Hawkins continued studying the papers with the methodical attention of a man who'd seen thousands of medical records. His expression shifted almost imperceptibly, professional courtesy giving way to something harder to read. "These documents look remarkably familiar." His voice carried a note I couldn't identify. Not confusion, but recognition tinged with something approaching disbelief. Victoria half rose from her chair. "That's impossible. I've never been to this office before." "No, you haven't." Dr. Hawkins set the papers down carefully, his gaze moving between Victoria and me. "But your husband has." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What do you mean, Roland has been here?" Dr. Hawkins rose from his chair and moved to a locked filing cabinet behind his desk. "Exactly 1 month ago, your son-in-law, Roland Stone, sat in that very chair." He withdrew a manila folder and returned to his desk. He brought identical documents. Victoria made a strangled sound, her face draining of all color. "That's not... You must be mistaken." "Are you at it again?" Dr. Hawkins' professional composure cracked for just a moment, revealing the anger of a medical professional confronted with systematic fraud. He opened the folder and spread Roland's documents beside Victoria's on his desk. The evidence was devastating, every letterhead identical, every signature traced in the same shaky hand. Even the coffee stain on one page appeared in exactly the same spot on both sets of documents. I leaned forward, my engineer's mind cataloging the impossibilities. "These are completely identical, down to the patient ID numbers," Dr. Hawkins confirmed. same fabricated test results, same non-existent treatment facilities, same cost estimates. He looked directly at Victoria. Your husband offered me $5,000 to sign these as legitimate medical records. Victoria's folder slipped from her hands, scattering papers across the floor. She made no attempt to retrieve them. When I refused, Dr. Hawkins continued, his voice carrying the weight of professional authority. He became aggressive, threatened that I shouldn't interfere with family business. He paused, studying Victoria's ashen face. I documented everything and threatened to call the police if he returned. The pieces fell together with horrible clarity. This was Roland's idea from the beginning. Victoria wasn't his first target. Dr. Hawkins pulled out additional notes from Roland's file. He mentioned planning to use the same documents with his parents in Ohio. He called it his family insurance plan. Victoria finally found her voice, barely above a whisper. Dad, I can explain. Can you? I turned to face my daughter fully. Can you explain how you came to possess documents identical to ones Roland tried to use to bribe a doctor? Can you explain how you looked me in the eye and claimed to have cancer? She crumpled forward in her chair, all pretense finally abandoned. We're in so much trouble, Dad. Roland owes money to people who don't wait for payment plans. Gambling debts, Dr. Hawkins stated matter-of-factly. He was quite specific about needing money to pay off business associates in Vegas. The systematic nature of the deception stunned me. This wasn't desperation. It was calculated fraud targeting multiple family members. My daughter had become a willing participant in a scheme to steal my life savings through emotional manipulation. How long have you been lying to me, Victoria? She looked up with tears streaming down her face. But these weren't the calculated tears from our previous conversations. These carried the weight of genuine shame. Since Roland's gambling got really bad 6 months ago, every call, every visit, I was looking for ways to get money without telling you the truth. Dr. Hawkins gathered both sets of documents into evidence piles. I have a professional obligation to report medical fraud. However, given the family's circumstances, he looked between us carefully. I'm willing to let this be handled privately if genuine steps are taken to address the underlying problems. Victoria nodded frantically. Anything. We'll do anything. But I was studying my daughter's face, searching for the person I'd raised beneath the desperate stranger she'd become. Victoria's breakdown was complete now, not the calculated performance I'd witnessed before, but genuine collapse under the weight of systematic deception. She buried her face in her hands, shoulders shaking with what sounded like genuine remorse. Tell me everything. My voice carried the quiet authority I'd used with subordinate engineers when safety protocols had been violated. No more lies, Victoria, not one more word of deception. She looked up with swollen eyes. Roland started gambling online 2 years ago. Small amounts at first, but it got worse after the kids were born. He said he was trying to win enough money to give them a better life. Dr. Hawkins listened with the professional detachment of someone who'd seen addiction destroy families before. How much does he owe? $47,000. The number came out as a whisper. To people who've been calling our house, threatening to come collect. The scope of their financial crisis began to clarify the desperation, but it didn't excuse the systematic fraud. So you decided to steal from me instead of getting professional help. Roland said families help each other. He said you had so much money sitting in accounts doing nothing while we were drowning. Victoria's voice climbed defensively, then caught herself. I know how that sounds now. I know it was wrong. Dr. Hawkins cleared his throat gently. Mr. Rose, gambling addiction often creates this kind of family dysfunction. The addict manipulates family members into enabling behaviors, including fraud and theft. I didn't want to lie to you, Victoria continued, her voice breaking. But Roland said if I couldn't get the money from you, he'd have to try more dangerous solutions. I was scared of what that meant. The mention of dangerous solutions sent a chill through me. What kind of dangerous solutions? He mentioned people who lend money at high interest rates, people who collect debts through other means, loan sharks. My daughter had been so desperate to avoid her husband's encounter with violent criminals that she'd agreed to defraud her own father using fake cancer documents. Victoria, I need you to understand something. I leaned forward, making eye contact. The moment you used your mother's memory to manipulate me, you crossed a line that changed everything between us. Fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. I hate myself for that. Mom would be so ashamed of what I've become. She would be heartbroken, I agreed. But she'd also want you to get help and rebuild your life honestly. Dr. Hawkins pulled out a business card from his desk drawer. There are excellent gambling addiction counselors in Chicago. Family therapy would also help address the manipulations patterns that have developed. Victoria took the card with trembling hands. Roland won't want to go to counseling. He says he can stop gambling whenever he wants. Then Roland will lose his family, I said firmly. Those are the only two choices, professional help or no contact with any of us. The weight of consequences was settling on Victoria like a physical presence. She sat straighter in her chair, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Dad, I want to be the daughter you raised again. I want my children to be proud of their mother instead of learning to lie and manipulate like I've been doing. For the first time since this nightmare began, I heard echoes of the Victoria I remembered, the young woman who'd valued honesty and hard work over easy money. That's going to require sustained effort, not just promises made in a moment of crisis. I know. She looked directly at me for the first time in weeks without calculation behind her eyes. I'm ready to do whatever it takes to earn back your trust. Dr. Hawkins stood, signaling the end of our consultation. The fraud attempt ends here. Any future deception of any kind will result in immediate police involvement. Victoria nodded solemnly. There won't be any future deception. I'm done living lies. Dr. Hawkins extended his hand as we prepared to leave. Elbert, I'm sorry this fraud brought such pain to your family, but I'm grateful we stopped it before any financial damage occurred. I shook his hand firmly. Nelson, your professionalism and integrity just saved me from the worst mistake of my life. If you hadn't documented Roland's visit, that's what we do in medicine, protect people from harm. He turned to Victoria, his tone stern but not unkind. Young lady, you have a father who loves you enough to set boundaries. Don't waste that gift. Victoria managed a weak smile. I won't, Dr. Hawkins. Thank you for not calling the police. We walked silently through the medical building corridors and into the parking garage, the weight of revealed truth heavy between us. Other families passed by, some celebrating good news, others processing difficult diagnoses. Real families dealing with genuine medical crises. In the car, Victoria finally broke the silence. Dad, I don't know how to apologize for what I've done to you, to us. I started the engine, but didn't immediately put the car in gear. The parking garage's fluorescent lights cast harsh shadows that seemed appropriate for this conversation. Victoria, apologizing is just the first step. Rebuilding trust requires sustained action over time. What do I need to do? First, no more financial support of any kind until you and Roland complete at least 6 months of professional counseling. I kept my voice firm, but loving. Second, complete transparency about your finances going forward. She nodded, accepting the consequences without argument. Third, Roland gets help for his gambling addiction, or he loses access to his family entirely. That includes me and the grandchildren. He's not going to like these terms. Then he'll have to choose between his addiction and his family. I put the car in reverse and began backing out of the parking space. Love sometimes means making difficult choices to protect the people we care about. As we drove through downtown Chicago traffic, Victoria stared out the window at the bustling city life. I miss who I used to be before everything became about money and desperation. That person is still there, Victoria, but she's been buried under lies and manipulation for so long that it's going to take work to find her again. We stopped at a red light, and Victoria turned to face me fully. Will you help me find her, even after everything I've done? The question pierced straight to the heart of fatherhood, the balance between love and accountability, between enabling and supporting. I'll help you rebuild, but you have to do the actual work. I'll pay for counseling, but you have to attend every session. I'll babysit the children, but you have to be honest with them about why changes are being made. I want them to be proud of me again. Then show them what courage looks like by facing problems honestly instead of creating elaborate lies. By the time we reached Victoria's neighborhood, she'd made 3 commitments: calling a gambling addiction counselor the next morning, having an honest conversation with Roland about mandatory counseling, and scheduling our first family meeting for the following weekend. I walked her to her front door, something I hadn't done in months. On her doorstep, she turned and hugged me with what felt like genuine affection instead of calculated manipulation. Dad, thank you for not giving up on me even when I gave up on myself. I'll never give up on you, Victoria, but I also won't enable behavior that hurts you or anyone else. As I drove home through the familiar streets of Evanston, I felt something I hadn't experienced in months: peace. Not the false peace of avoiding conflict, but the true peace that comes from addressing problems directly and establishing healthy boundaries. My phone rang as I pulled into my driveway. Victoria's number appeared on the screen. Dad, I just called the counselor. We have an appointment Thursday morning. For the first time in this entire ordeal, my daughter had followed through on a promise immediately instead of creating elaborate justifications for delay. I'm proud of you for taking that first step. It's going to be hard work, isn't it? The best work always is. After hanging up, I sat in my car for a few minutes, surrounded by the quiet of my neighborhood. Winifred's memory felt present but peaceful, as if she approved of the difficult decisions I'd made today. Justice had been served, not through punishment, but through truth and appropriate consequences. My daughter would have the chance to rebuild her life honestly, but only if she chose to do the work. That choice was hers to make. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.